All right, so now let's leave the oil and gas and energy for some time and talk about something you may have been experiencing recently with your financial institution. The banking apps have not been so friendly in the coming days. But fair enough, we've had notifications and warnings from some of the banks preparing their customers that they were having new core banking apps and some new things were expected. But in many cases, we've seen beyond the time given for the warning that monies are still being held even up till now. So let's talk about try to understand the technicality of that with Bobola Ojo Ami. He is the head of marketing at MIM Finance, MIM Finance, head of marketing. Thank you so much, Bobola, for your time. Have you experienced this in recent times, talking about using any of the mobile apps?
Absolutely, I have. I mean, in the past 1 week, I have one of my main bank accounts, which I have not been able to operate at all. So I do absolutely understand what the experience has been for most of us Nigerians in the past 1 month.
So help us to understand the technicalities, what's really going on. We know they told us they're supposed to move to new applications that are supposed to make them more efficient and all of that. And but it's even taking longer than they told us it would be.
Absolutely, and that's the thing with migrations between infrastructure for establishments as large as banks, right? And it also brings to bear the reality that banks are very, very integral to the economy in every sense. You need to be able to move money one way or another, and that's the entire basis behind why the banks are doing what they're doing. They have to improve their infrastructure. They have to strengthen their systems and make sure that they can serve their customers efficiently. Now, the reality with migration, like I said earlier on, is you can never be absolutely prepared, right? The average migration for an entity as large as a bank can take between 1 year to 6 months, right? On average, right? The implementation process is one that is very, very daunting, and I'll give reasons why it's that way. They have trillions of data, in transactions that they have to migrate to this new system that is different from what they were using before. They have, millions of customers who they're also migrating. They are trying to manage transactions in real time across 2 different systems. They are having to train their thousands of staff across, those 2 different systems. It's a very, very rigorous process behind it. Now, I think the area that is very important for the banks is to also ensure that they are very, very, very careful with how they communicate with customers and they carry them along, right? That's the part that is really, really important because they can't get it right, absolutely. And that's why communicating to the customers, letting them know this is where we are right now. In the next couple of days, this is what we expect. If it changes, they communicate on time, and customers will have a little bit more confidence in what the experience is meant to be for them at the end of the entire process.
So, but what can we expect? Why should we pay this price to start with? What can we expect on the other side of this migration?
I believe there are about 3 things that are most important, right, that the banks are indirectly promising to their customers. One is that they will be able to offer a much more efficient service. When I say efficient service in this case, that cuts across with speed of transacting, cost of transacting as well, right, among several areas. You also have their own internal operational efficiency, areas of efficiency, internally across their operations, where they are able to also save costs, right, across board. This in turn will allow them to be able to do more for their customers, right? And then I think last and most important is the security, right? Data security, the security of customers' transactions. And I think I would also tie that. I'll go to the first point I mentioned when I was talking about operational efficiency, right? By a large margin, Nigerian customers have had one issue or the other with their banking apps. Those inefficiencies are pretty much one of the things that they want to take away. Some of these banks have had their infrastructure for a couple of years now. They need to move to the new systems that allow them do a lot more, be much more efficient across board, and serve their customers better. So I think that is what we should expect at the end of the tunnel, if I may.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, you said it might take about 6 months or so. Normally, migration and infrastructure, when you look at the quantum of data and transactions that they will have to move. So I wonder what happens in between, because even as we speak, I'm sure you head to any major bank now, go to their customer service area, and it's crowded because there are lots of complaints and, transactions that cannot be concluded and all of that. So I wonder how they can handle such efficiently, to still keep the customers' sentiments positive.
Absolutely. So there are two ways to look at this. For banks that are currently in between this experience right now, the best thing they need to do, like I said, is accurately communicate to the customer. This is what we're experiencing right now. This is what the outcome is going to be, right? Within this period of time. That gives customer clarity. Clarity is really what is most important. The average person has been using their bank for more than 10 years or more, right? And they probably don't intend to change. They trust that bank. If the banks want those trusts, to be continually maintained, they need to communicate, right, accurately to say, this is exactly what is going on. This is what you can do in the interim. These are the stopgaps we've created. I'll give an example. I was trying to transact yesterday with a particular commercial bank. Permit me not to mention it.
Please.
But I spoke to my account officer instead, right, because I couldn't use the platform, and he was able to enable the transaction on my behalf. Now, not all Nigerians have access to their account officers, right, which is where communicating effectively to let customers know this is what you can do at this point in time. This is what you can do at this point in time. This is what we've created as stopgaps for this type of issues. Do they have FAQs for the entirety of that migration period? Even after the migration is done, have they designed things in a way whereby customers can talk to customer care representatives, and the customer care representative person knows exactly what to say without fear that they're probably going to pass wrong information or the information is going to change. Now, you spoke about, you made reference to the migration timeline I spoke about earlier on. Now, that 6 months to 1 year is the preliminary stage, where they are preparing before the migration itself even happens. They can't be 100% prepared because it's sort of more a testing experience. The real migration happens when they start the process and they then try to move data between the old system to the new system. Within the preliminary stage, training happens, infrastructure setup happens where they need to change servers and things like that. But the actual migration process is where it gets crazy. I think I can mention names here. Sterling Bank had their experience; they did beautifully well on the basis that they probably built their own infrastructure in-house because it's an indigenous infrastructure called CBAS. You also have a few other banks who are in the process. Again, I won't mention names. But like I said, communicating effectively to the customer.
Are they doing that now?
To the best of my knowledge, I think they are trying, but there's a lot more they can do.
Because I've only seen like one notification from each of those banks, the major ones that are embarking on this migration, telling customers, oh, we're going to be off, or you cannot access the app between this time and this time. And for a lot of them, the time they gave has elapsed, and customers are still facing those issues. And I don't think I've seen any other communication after that.
Yes, absolutely, which again goes to my point behind communication. This is exactly why. This is what tells the customer that I am beloved. You are paying attention to me as a customer, and you are doing this because of me. I care to you as a bank, right? So like I said, for banks who are in the thick of it right now, they need to communicate, right? To give customers the confidence they need. And this is a recommendation that is important across board. We also have a lot of indigenous digital banks these days who from the very onset, they already built their infrastructure as such to be able to serve the Nigerian customer digitally. For most of our commercial banks, their model of operation is different. They are traditional, and then they are also, trying to move their entire business model into the digital side of things. So the recommendation will also be for the average Nigerian to explore some of the indigenous digital banks that exist. For Money Points, these are banks
You're
that
mentioning names.
if I may, those type of institutions, they can also rely on them in this instance. And
I think a lot of Nigerians are already moving that way, but I mean, it will obviously be to the detriment of the major banks. And then there'll also come the fear of how much can the digital banks, also handle. I remember the other time when we had the new currency issue and a lot of Nigerians moved to the way of the digital banks. It got to a level that it was really heavy for them to handle the transactions and all of that. So we actually need all hands to be on deck. And I do wish that the banks will communicate more, to keep the confidence of their customers, which is very important. But it seems in this part of the world, we like to hoard information. But thank you so much for your time this afternoon, Bobola Ojoami, for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right.